Imagine designing a fully programmable computer in the 1830s, more than a century before the digital age, only to watch the world dismiss your vision as impossible fantasy. What you are about to discover is the story of a brilliant mathematician whose mechanical marvel could have launched the computer revolution 100 years early, yet died forgotten and ridiculed by the very establishment he tried to enlighten. In a cramped London workshop filled with thousands of precisely machined gears and cogwheels, a man worked obsessively on a machine that would not be fully understood or appreciated until long after his death. This is the remarkable tale of Charles Babbage, the Victorian polymath who conceived of programmable computing, designed machines of breathtaking complexity, and saw his greatest achievements destroyed by lack of funding, technological limitations, and the short-sightedness of government bureaucrats. Born on December 26, 1791, in London, England, Babbage grew up during a time of dramatic scientific and industrial transformation, when steam engines were revolutionizing manufacturing and mathematics was becoming increasingly important for navigation and commerce. From childhood, Babbage displayed an insatiable curiosity about how things worked, often taking apart his toys to understand their mechanisms, a habit that would define his entire approach to problem-solving. He attended Trinity College, Cambridge in 1810, where he quickly discovered that his mathematical knowledge already exceeded that of his tutors, leading him to form the Analytical Society with like-minded students to advance mathematical education in England. British mathematics at the time lagged far behind continental Europe, still using outdated notation systems, while European mathematicians had moved forward with more efficient symbolic methods developed by Leibniz and Euler. Babbage and his colleagues worked to modernize British mathematics, translating advanced European texts and promoting new approaches that would eventually transform Cambridge University into a world-class center for mathematical research. After graduating, Babbage's wide-ranging interests led him to make contributions in fields as diverse as astronomy, cryptography, economics, statistics, and philosophy, yet his greatest obsession would become mechanical calculation. If these stories of visionary minds ahead of their time inspire you, subscribe to Hidden Minds and activate the notification bell to discover more forgotten geniuses who saw the future before the world was ready. Visit the link in the description for technical diagrams, historical documents, and additional resources about Babbage's revolutionary computing machines. In the early 1820s, Babbage became increasingly frustrated with errors in published mathematical tables used for navigation, astronomy, and engineering, mistakes that resulted in shipwrecks, miscalculations, and financial losses. These tables were calculated by hand by poorly paid human computers, mostly women and clerks, who performed endless repetitive calculations with inevitable errors that propagated through printed tables. In 1821, while checking astronomical calculations with his friend John Herschel, Babbage reportedly exclaimed in frustration that he wished these calculations could be executed by steam, sparking the idea that would consume the rest of his life. He began designing the difference engine, a mechanical calculator that could automatically compute and print mathematical tables using the method of finite differences, eliminating human error entirely. The difference engine was designed to calculate polynomial functions by adding numbers repeatedly, using thousands of precisely engineered brass gears, wheels, and shafts arranged in vertical columns that would carry values and perform automatic operations. Babbage's design was revolutionary not just in concept but in execution, requiring manufacturing precision that barely existed in 1820s Britain, with tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch for mechanical components. In 1823, Babbage received government funding of £17,000, an enormous sum equivalent to several $1 million today, to construct a demonstration model of the difference engine No. 1. For the next decade, he worked with engineer Joseph Clement, who created specialized tools to manufacture the incredibly precise components required for the machine, essentially inventing modern precision engineering in the process. By 1833, a small working section had been completed, demonstrating conclusively that the principle was sound and mechanical calculation was feasible. Yet the project stalled due to mounting costs and disputes over ownership of the specialized tools. The British government, increasingly skeptical about Babbage's promises and alarmed by expenses that had reached £17,000 with no complete machine to show, eventually withdrew funding in 1842, effectively killing the difference engine project. However, during the construction of the difference engine, Babbage had conceived of something far more ambitious, a machine that would not merely calculate but could be programmed to perform any mathematical operation imaginable. This was the analytical engine, arguably the first design for a general-purpose programmable computer, conceived in 1837, more than a century before electronic computers would be built. The analytical engine's design included all the fundamental components of a modern computer, including a mill for performing arithmetic operations equivalent to a central processing unit, a store for holding numbers equivalent to computer memory, and a mechanism for reading instructions from punched cards. Babbage drew inspiration from the Jacquard loom, a French automated weaving machine that used punched cards to control complex patterns, realizing that the same principle could control mathematical operations. The analytical engine was designed to read two types of punched cards: operation cards that specified what function to perform and variable cards that indicated which numbers to operate on, creating a fully programmable system. Even more remarkably, Babbage's design included conditional branching, where the machine could make decisions based on intermediate results and alter its operation accordingly, a concept fundamental to modern programming. The scale of the analytical engine was staggering, with plans calling for approximately 25,000 mechanical parts, standing 15 feet tall and requiring a steam engine to power its operations. Had it been built, the analytical engine could have performed addition in 1 second, multiplication in 1 minute, and stored 1,000 numbers of 50 digits each, capabilities that wouldn't be matched until electronic computers in the 1940s. Babbage spent the rest of his life refining the design, creating hundreds of detailed engineering drawings and exploring increasingly sophisticated mechanisms for the analytical engine, but never securing funding to build it. One person who fully grasped the revolutionary nature of Babbage's vision was Ada Lovelace, daughter of Lord Byron, a brilliant mathematician who became fascinated by the analytical engine after meeting Babbage. In 1843, Lovelace translated an Italian description of the analytical engine and added extensive notes that were longer than the original article, including what is now recognized as the first computer program. Lovelace's notes described how the analytical engine could be programmed to calculate Bernoulli numbers, providing step-by-step instructions that constitute the first published algorithm intended for machine execution, making her arguably the world's first programmer. More importantly, Lovelace understood that the machine's capabilities extended far beyond mere calculation, writing prophetically that it could manipulate symbols according to rules and might compose music or produce graphics if those things could be expressed in symbolic form. Her vision of computers as general-purpose symbol manipulation machines rather than just number crunchers anticipated by a century how computers would actually be used for text processing, image manipulation, and artificial intelligence. Despite these insights, Babbage's work was largely dismissed by his contemporaries as impractical fantasy, and he became increasingly bitter and isolated as funding dried up and the scientific establishment turned away from his mechanical dreams. His confrontational personality and inability to compromise didn't help matters, as he alienated potential supporters with harsh criticisms of their mathematical abilities and stubborn insistence on his own methods. Babbage spent his personal fortune building partial sections of his machines, filling his London home with mechanical components and working obsessively on improvements to designs that would never be completed in his lifetime. The tragic irony was that while Babbage's machines were theoretically sound, the precision manufacturing required to build them at scale simply didn't exist in 19th century Britain, and wouldn't exist until the 20th century. His designs required tolerances and manufacturing techniques that were decades ahead of available technology, making his vision achievable in theory but impossible in practice with Victorian engineering. When Babbage died in 1871 at age 79, he was regarded as a failed inventor, a brilliant but impractical dreamer who had wasted government money and his own fortune on impossible machines. His workshop was dismantled, his designs were scattered among various institutions, and his greatest achievements were forgotten as the world moved forward without understanding what he had almost accomplished. For decades, Babbage remained a historical footnote, mentioned occasionally in histories of mathematics but dismissed as an eccentric Victorian inventor whose mechanical computers had been rendered obsolete before they were even built. It wasn't until the mid-20th century, when electronic computers were being developed, that engineers and historians began to study Babbage's designs and realized with astonishment how far ahead of his time he had been. Researchers discovered that Babbage had independently invented concepts that would become fundamental to modern computing, including programmability, conditional branching, loops, and the separation of processing from memory storage. In the 1980s and 90s, museums undertook projects to build working versions of Babbage's machines using his original designs and 19th century manufacturing techniques to determine if they would actually function. The London Science Museum completed a full-scale difference engine number 2 in 1991, using Babbage's drawings and proving conclusively that his design was completely functional and would have worked perfectly if built in his lifetime. The completed engine weighs 5 tons, contains 8,000 parts, and calculates to 31 digits of accuracy, operating exactly as Babbage predicted it would more than 150 years earlier. This vindication came far too late for Babbage himself, but it demonstrated that his failure was not one of design but of timing, that he had conceived of programmable computing a century before the technology existed to realize his vision. Modern computer scientists studying his analytical engine designs have found them remarkably sophisticated, incorporating solutions to problems that wouldn't be fully understood until the development of electronic computers in the 1940s. The principles Babbage established, including the separation of input, output, processing, and storage, remain fundamental to computer architecture today, from smartphones to supercomputers. His influence can be seen in every programmable device, every algorithm, every line of code written for computers that Babbage imagined but never lived to see, yet his name remains largely unknown outside computing history. The tragedy of Charles Babbage is not just personal but represents how society often fails to recognize revolutionary ideas when they appear, how lack of funding and institutional support can delay progress by generations. Had Britain continued funding his work, had manufacturing technology been slightly more advanced, had his contemporaries understood his vision, the computer age might have begun in the 1850s instead of the 1940s. Universities and research institutions now study Babbage's work not as historical curiosity, but as sophisticated engineering that anticipated modern computing principles with mechanical components instead of electronic circuits. Every time you use a computer, execute a program, or benefit from automated calculation, you're experiencing the realization of Charles Babbage's dream, a vision he pursued obsessively despite ridicule, poverty, and institutional rejection. The forgotten genius who filled notebooks with gear ratios and mechanical designs, who saw the future of computation in brass and steel, who died believing himself a failure, was actually one of history's most profound visionaries.